Who is your daddy? I am your father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
Well, I guess let's jump right in now that Derek got to witness me trying to send all the kids in different directions throughout the house, including making sure the dog doesn't escape again. How was that, by the way, watching all that in action?
It made me appreciate only having 3 kids. That being said, again, I've never been to your house or anything. Your kids seem a little more well-behaved and calmer than mine. My 3 feel like 6 because they're really bad. Like, do your kids, like, fight all the time? And when I say fight, I'm not talking about disagreements. I'm talking about punching, breaking things, trying to kill each other. That's what my 3 do.
Kate, would you say that our kids fight each other physically very often? I don't think so. I don't know. No, our kids don't really do a lot of the hitting. They do a lot of the verbal abuse, right?
Yeah.
Where you're yelling at each other, arguing, you did this, you did that. And sometimes there's 2 in particular, one of our twins, Thad, and then Magursa, our second oldest. Those 2, if there's going to be a physical exchange, it's usually those 2 involved with the hitting. But it usually escalates to that. They don't start there yet.
No, mine just jump to it. Like Eli wants to throw down with Ian every day, every second. And Emily doesn't like to be harassed at all. She'll just punch him. So
Derek's kids, Kate, they just jump right to the punching. That's how they operate. It just saves time, It saves a lot of emotional stress and time. Let's just jump right to the punching and
while they're screaming like, "You're fat, you're ugly, you're not as good at soccer as me." Yeah. The usual.
Oh, we'll get some new goggles. All right, let's jump into episode 111 if we can. We're going to talk today mainly about Monster Hunter World, which I'm excited to discuss.
Yeah.
Hey, Kale. I'm recording here. Can you lower your volume a tad? Oh, all right. Yeah. Wow. You know what it is? They might not hit and punch each other, but they certainly have a lot of passive aggressive activity going on. I'm not sure which is worse. So you got to deal with the kids punching each other, potential ER visits, and I got to deal with the passive aggressive, like, I have no respect for you, right? So I don't know. Which is worse.
Kelly, you're being kind of loud. Oh, was I?
Yeah. Oh, was I? How about this then? Let me turn the volume up a notch or 2. By the way, anyone listening who has no kids, just stay that way, Just
stay that way. Say it.
Just kidding.
Not really.
I was waiting for you to say not really. All right. Anyway.
I did say not really. I just said it quietly. I said
okay.
Really.
All right. Not really. By the way, my wife and I have had this conversation about how boring life would be without any kids. There are nights when it's like, this is super tough and we're exhausted, but there's plenty of times that we're like, it'd be so boring. Just be able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. How boring would that be?
I mean, I see it both ways because, like, my kids, they'll see us, fight and argue or whatever, and they'll be like, "Why don't y'all just get a divorce? You clearly don't like each other." And I'm like, "Let me explain something to you." I explained this to all 3 of them. I said, "What you don't understand is when we go on a date, we never fight, we never argue, nobody snaps at anyone." We just enjoy each other's company. Do you know why? And then they are like, because we're not there. And I'm like, exactly. You're annoying. You're the reason why we fight. So they
figured out the algebra behind it, right? The missing variable.
Yeah. You're annoying. That's why we fight.
Okay. I'm trying to record an episode. I love you. My 6-year-old giving me his update on, he's playing Plants vs. Zombies, going old school this afternoon.
Oh,
okay. So we actually are going to jump into episode 111 here, I swear. And we're going to talk about Monster Hunter World, but also want to cover a few things that we're playing because it's been a few weeks since we talked, and I've been able to wrap up a game we discussed as well as try a few other ones. So why don't you kick us off, forgetting about Monster Hunter World for a second, because I want to spend most of our time talking about that. Talk about other stuff you've been playing a little bit in the last couple weeks.
The main game, obviously Rocket League's the main game. It's always the main game. But the main game before Monster Hunter was Persona 5. I jumped back into that. Don't really need to talk about it. Robert Snow wanted us to do a full review on it. Again, he wanted to spend at least an hour of our time talking about it. I'm not going to do that, Robert. I'm going to let you down. You guys know how both Tim and I feel. My feelings haven't really... I will say this. The only thing I would say. My feelings have changed towards the game a little bit, and that is it's more positive feeling, meaning I played like the first 20 hours enjoying it, but being annoyed by the over-talking, and I just had that sense the whole time I was playing. I was like, I'm never going to beat this game. So I'm not going to rate this high because it's not hooking me to the point where I'm like, yep, I'm going to finish it. Now, while I'm, again, not committing to finishing it, now that I've gotten through the third castle, which means I'm probably like 40% through, I would think. Now that I've gotten through the third castle, or palace, sorry, I always say castle, I'm enjoying it more, and it's starting to become more realistic that I might play through this because I'm finding that it's pretty easy to leave it and then come back and play it like I did Zelda and not feel lost.
Okay.
So
all right.
I think I'm going to keep playing it. That was my main game. The only other thing I want to touch on is I played a little bit of the Sea of Thieves beta. And I got to say, while I think it's a beautiful game, like the water is gorgeous. Jesse White was telling me the water is taken from Forza Horizon 3. And I don't really remember the water in Forza Horizon 3. That wasn't like a main part of the game. But when you're actually on the boat and you're looking out at the sea, it's the most gorgeous sea I've ever seen in a game. There's no other game that has prettier water. It looks realistic, which is funny because the
characters don't. Yeah.
Yes, the whole world is like cartoonish, but the water looks real. So it's
cool.
Kind
I
of
like that mixture.
Yeah, it's a cool contrast. But as far as the game, I have no idea what it is. And to be fair, I want to make sure I'm fair to it. I only played maybe 20 minutes because I was like, I don't have time for this. Like, the game's not explaining it doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you your controls. It doesn't tell you what you should be doing. It just puts you in the world and then you go do whatever. Which is
that because
fine.
of the way the beta is structured, or is that the way the game launches?
I believe it's both, meaning like the game is going to have way more to do. Apparently, this is just what I've read from other users, so if they're wrong, then I'm wrong here. But apparently it's going to have like raids and stuff like that, like almost like a Destiny setup where you're going to have purpose to what you're doing. You're not just floating around aimlessly.
Okay.
And when I joined a crew, because I joined 3 randoms, they were grabbing treasure chests off an island and loading it in their boat. But I didn't know how they were doing it. Like, I didn't know where it was on their map. I don't know what they were doing. And then I didn't have a lot of time at the
You were like the little brother tagging along, like, what are we doing, guys?
I was like, yeah, I have no idea what's going on. And so I just quit out, and then I never really came back to it. But as far as looks great.
Good.
It has potential, but I have no idea what it is.
Well, a lot of people have some positive feedback on that game. It seems to be pretty fun, although there's lots who are also kind of, I don't know if mediocre is the right word, but their reaction is a little more, let's wait and see, right?
Well, and that's where I would fall.
Okay.
I will say this, because we don't have it on the agenda to talk about it, but this was huge news. And I don't even know if you saw it. Yeah, the Game Pass is now going to include Sea of Thieves, Crackdown 3, and I always forget the stinking game. It's one I'm looking forward to.
State of Decay 2.
Yeah, State of Decay 2. So those 3 games are included in the Game Pass.
The idea is that
I found that out,
all future exclusives will be included, correct?
That is the report that came out as well. Because I was actually having a conversation with Rob and Jesse and Jamie and all them, and I was like, look, the reason they're offering these 3 games, if you look at the 3 games they're offering, is because the majority of the people that are going to play this game are going to play multiplayer. These are co-op multiplayer style games. State of Decay is 2 is going to be multiplayer or co-op.
So you're going to need an Xbox Live Gold pass,
Yeah.
right? You'll need to, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and they want to
they'll-
hook you longer than a month. And so they are also, and the way Game Pass works is kind of like Netflix. So games come in and then they fluctuate out. So Metal Gear Solid 5 was in there for I think a month, maybe 2 months. It's now leaving in like 3 days. It won't be
but
in
enough
there.
time for someone who hasn't played it yet to jump in there, experience the game for a couple months, and then it's gone, right?
Yep,
So that makes sense.
Yeah. So I decided actually to cancel my Sea of Thieves pre-order. There's no point in paying $60 for a digital version of a game I'm not completely sold on, so I canceled it, and I'm just going to do the Game Pass in March, and
Which is $9.99 a month, right?
Yep.
And you have full access to whatever is in their library.
Yep.
If you've got an
Over 100
Xbox
games.
One, this seems like a no-brainer to me because I'm going to sign up for it. It just seems like an obvious thing to sign up for. Kind of like Netflix. If you're cutting cable, Netflix is an obvious service to have. There's no reason not to have it. You get so much value for what you pay. And this seems, if you've got an Xbox One, to be an obvious service to try out. So I'm excited about it.
At least when the big games release. It
Yeah,
makes
this is why
$10.
this is why I will have some thoughts on Sea of Thieves, is because I'll be able to play this because I'll have Game Pass. And same thing with Crackdown 3 and these others. So I'm excited about it. I give Microsoft major props for this. I think it's a great announcement. I'm going to try it out, and as we give it a try, we will give you our feedback and our thoughts on the Game Pass service.
Yep. So they did announce Halo, Gears, all those will be included. They also announced, this was huge for me, it's the reason why I go digital with all of Xbox exclusives, is because if you have access to it and game access on your Xbox, it's a play anywhere title. It's going to be available on PC as well. So I'll be able to play these on PC with anybody who's playing on Xbox. That's huge. I love that.
This is great news for you Microsoft fans out there. So you hear us talk a lot, especially in recent months, about Nintendo and Sony. But this is major news for Microsoft, and I think a great way to get people like me to turn their Xbox Ones back on and start getting back into those worlds. So very exciting, very good news there.
Yep.
So I did finish Resident Evil 7, actually just 2 days after the last time we recorded. So I finished it shortly after that, really at your encouragement, like, hey, you're already deep into this game, just finish it. And overall, I think it's a really good game. I can see why people love it so much. I've said this before in a post. If you guys are interested in seeing my deeper thoughts on it, it's in our group, in our Fathers of the Grind Facebook group. But basically, it came down to, I think the atmosphere is great. This game is creepy as can be. It's really well done. I thought the final act was a little less creepy and a little bit more kind of standard, horror stuff. But definitely the first 2/3 of the game had me on edge and feeling very creeped out. And that's a success for this kind of game. Some of the boss battles had some interesting moments, but overall the gameplay itself was not my favorite. And I think that's just a preference thing. If you love the way Resident Evil games play, the more I've thought about this, by the way, I think it plays perfectly. If you are not really a fan of how those games have played, if they've always kind of bothered you, then you probably, like me, will think this gameplay isn't that great. Okay, but for a Resident Evil style game with what they're going for, it actually is pretty great. So I ended up feeling kind of mediocre on the gameplay, but I really enjoyed the overall world and atmosphere. So to me, it was a really good but not great game. But I see why you, Kyle, and Rudy especially loved it for our Game of the Year conversation. So it's nice to wrap a game up that that when you skip one from the previous year. So I wrapped up Resident Evil 7. I did, at your recommendation, I bought NBA Playgrounds on the Switch when it was down to $9.99. I'm not sure if it's still at that price or not, but I bought it. And apparently it's got some DLC that came with it. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, you bought like the new version.
Yeah.
That has like way more content.
Yeah, some kind of enhanced edition.
Yeah.
The fact that it has way more content tells me how bare bones the original version was, because it still doesn't have some basic stuff like, give me a season mode, or let me just run a 3-point contest offline against the computer. Like those kinds of things just aren't there. But overall, it's a pretty fun little arcade game. I think it reminds me the most of NBA Showtime, not so much like NBA Jam. And it is very timing based. So the shooting is all about this little bar that builds up, and based on your player's stats, it'll either be a really big area of margin for error or really small. And of course, your percentages on making those shots depend on their skills in those areas. So it's pretty fun. Unlocking new players, opening card packs, that stuff's always fun no matter what game you're playing. So it's fun. I actually have spent a decent amount of time with it. I beat all the tournaments and played a few online matches. So I feel like I've gotten a pretty good experience with that game. And now it's just kind of in my rotation alongside stuff like Picross X, or I'm sorry, Picross S. Whenever I just need something to play in the background, NBA Playgrounds is going to stay installed, and it's one of those games that I'll play every once in a while. It's pretty fun. It's not great, but it's
not
pretty
great. It's good.
Yeah, pretty fun. I think if they added more modes, the actual gameplay of the basketball game itself is fun enough to me that I could see myself going through a season or creating my own player and all that kind of stuff. They just don't have those options that I can find, at least. So anyway, It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I played a little bit of Darkest Dungeon, but I'll talk about this at a future date when I actually have more time to put into it. Suffice to say, it's got full touchscreen controls, just like on the Vita version, but it's even better because the screen's bigger. It runs great on the Switch, super stylish and obviously dark. It's kind of a punishing game as well from what I've experienced so far in my first hour or two with it. So I'm going to go back when I kind of have more free time, and I'm just going to restart a full playthrough of Darkest Dungeon to get the full experience. Very cool RPG, though. If you like RPGs, especially ones that have like a darker tone to them, I suggest you give this one a shot. It's a really interesting game.
Yeah, I have it on the PS4. I actually, because everybody started talking about it, I booted it up like last week. But I only played like 30 minutes because I was kind of like you, where I was like, I've got too much going on that starting this would be dumb. So I didn't bother diving in too deep. But I liked what I played. It made me want to play it, but I didn't keep going. And
from what I've seen, I remember speaking of Robert Snow, getting a second shout out so far this show. He's the one who showed us some stuff about it about a year or a little more over a year ago, and that included being able to name your own characters and stuff like that. So there's some stuff you can do, almost like XCOM, where you can name your own characters, but if they die, they're gone for good, that kind of stuff. So it looks very intriguing, very, very in-depth, very deep RPG. So I want to get into it, but right now I'm playing some other stuff. One of my games that I'm going to try to wrap up in February, I played through the first chapter last weekend. That's Republique, which I've had on the PS4 for a while. And I finally started playing through it. If you played through, now bear with me, Derek, Watch Dogs 2, the elements of that game where you are jumping from camera to camera to kind of be able to map things out. Hi, Thad. You want to say hi? Hi. Okay. As you're jumping from camera to camera to map things out, it's kind of like that, except it's not at all a combat game, although you do have a small attack ability. It's kind of like a mace spray you can do or a taser, you can knock them out. It's really just a stealth game where you're using technology. You're hacking things. You're trying to upgrade your ability to hack. And it's got a lot of really good nods to other games that have been started through Kickstarter, stuff like Shovel Knight. And so you collect these floppy disks of video games as this guy is trying to help guide you through the opening level. And you're finding these floppy disks of games like Shovel Knight and a few others. So it's a really interesting game. Not quite as amazing as I was expecting. Maybe my expectation was too high. It just got so touted as this amazing experience. So far, it's pretty good. And I'm going to keep playing through it. I'm hoping it's one of my 4 in February that I play through. By the way, for those of you listening, don't know what that is. The idea is 4 games off your backlog that you play all the way through and finish during the month of February. So Republique's going to be one of those. I'll talk more about it later. And lastly, this month of January has ended super strong for me in terms of new games that have released. I've been playing the old school platformer Celeste, which has some elements of Ori platforming, not Ori combat. There's really no combat in this, as well as Super Meat Boy. It's kind of those two things put together. Ori in terms of the way the movement feels and the way you can climb up walls and stuff, and Super Meat Boy in the way it looks with a really old school pixelated style. It's a very niche game. So if you're not into super challenging old school platformers, don't bother with it. If you are, give this one a shot. From what I can tell, it's actually got a really trippy story. It's actually going to be kind of emotional, I think, by the end, even though it's kind of silly at times too. So Celeste is a very interesting game. It's on every platform. I'm playing it, of course, on the Switch, where I own 38 games, I counted the other night.
That's terrible.
That's probably too many.
I think I own like 5.
Yeah, well, I love Nintendo now. I'm a Nintendo bot all over again.
Yeah, I can tell. And no to Celeste, that's trash. Nobody needs to buy that. It's just one of those overhyped garbage games that the media loves because it's probably 3 hours long and they're like, oh, we actually finished the game, so we love it.
So I don't know how long this game is. I've already played it for 3 hours, and I don't think I'm anywhere close to the end. They do have what's called the B-side. So if you can collect, there's a super secret cassette tape you can collect in each level that unlocks a B-side version, and it's a much more difficult version of the level. So they introduce some ways to create replayability if you're again really into the challenge of these old school platforming type of games. I think it's really good, but that's just me. That's just me. I don't think it's a 10 like some outlets are giving it. I think so far in my experience, it's in that 8 to 8.5 range. It's very good, but there we go. All right.
Oh, I do want to, before we move on to the main topic, and yes, I do want to get to it, because we haven't recorded in a couple weeks. I did finish What Remains of Edith Finch, and I also beat BioShock 2 for the second time.
Hey, nice.
But I do want to talk about just Edith Finch for a second, because that was kind of hyped up by Rudy and Family Song. I was hyped up by Rudy and Kyle, like having this amazing story, and even like reviewers. It was up for like Story of the Year. It may have even won some awards for it. I thought it was okay. Like I thought the way they told the story was cool, but again, it was kind of like, let's build it up. Let's build it up. What's the payoff? And then the payoff was kind of like, that's it. That's why I played this game. Also, do not buy this game unless it's like under $5, because it's like 2 hours long and it's a walking simulator.
Really?
So it's not like fun to play. So unless you're dying to see how the story plays out, I don't think it's worth more than $5. I mean, I ended up paying $8, so it's not a big deal. And I'm not trashing it. I gave it like, I'm starting to put like review scores next to the game. So at the end of the year, I can be like, how much did I love this game? I gave it a 7. I thought it was, it's worth a playthrough, but it's not something I'm going to go back to. And it's not something I walked away going, oh, wow, the story's so good.
Okay. And how would you compare it to Vanishing at Ethan Carter, which is probably one of my favorite walking simulators?
I think, oh, hello, boy. Say hello to Tim.
Hey, Eli.
He said hi, Eli. Okay. Emo Eli. Did you get in trouble? Mama get you in trouble? Okay. All right. So as far as comparing it, I think I didn't like Edith Finch or not Edith Finch. What was it? I didn't like that one that much. I liked the other one better, the one on PlayStation by the Japanese.
Oh, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture?
Yeah, I ended up liking that one more. I liked Everyone's Gone to the Rapture more than Edith Finch, although Edith Finch, you don't have to walk as much and you don't walk as slow. But other than that, I felt like the stories were better in Everyone Goes to the Rapture or whatever.
Cool. Okay. Good. That's one that I do want to play, but I'm with you. I'm gonna wait till it's, if not PS Plus, then at least super, super cheap, which I'm sure it has been before, but I haven't been looking for it, you know?
Oh, and we're going to move on, I promise. But BioShock 2, the whole reason I played that one, because people might be like, why did you go back to that one and not the first and third one? I've played the original BioShock, I think, 2 or 3 times already. Like, I beat it already 2 or 3 times. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And Infinite, I've beat 4 times. And I'm actually halfway through my 5th playthrough. But BioShock 2 is the only one that I played once, and I had, like, bad memories of that game. Not that it was a terrible game. I just remember not liking it as much as BioShock, and definitely not as much as Infinite, which is actually, for those who don't know, my favorite game of all time. So it's not one that I have, like, very positive like memories of, and I don't really talk about it. But Jesse White kept going, it's got the best story in all of BioShock. And I'm like, well, the reason why Infinite is my favorite game of all time is because the story, the twist, everything they do in that game. Yeah. It's so good. And the main reason I love the first BioShock is it has 2 like twists in that game that I'm like, what, you know, that were amazing. That second one, I don't remember it doing that. So I played through it. I did it in one day. I took a Friday, I wasn't at work, and I played the entire game through in one day. And while I definitely like it way more than I remember it, it does not have the best story. In fact, I thought the ending, which I know both endings because I did the bad ending the first time I played it, I did the good ending this time. The payoff is kind of stupid in my opinion. So Jesse White, like usual, is wrong. He has a terrible opinion about things. And I would rate BioShock 2 probably a 9, but it definitely falls way below the other two, in my opinion.
Yeah. For those who haven't played it, the opening of the original BioShock is still one of the coolest openings to any game. It really just right away, there's a plane crash and you're swimming through the oil that's burning on top of the water, and you get into this lighthouse, and then you go down to the depths underneath the ocean, and there's this weird announcement going on, but then clearly something has gone wrong in this place. And then, of course, you get attacked right out of the gate in that elevator. It's a really great opening. It's very atmospheric. I love the opening of the original BioShock. BioShock 2 didn't do it for me. I actually never finished BioShock 2, but I'm with you. I think Infinite is my favorite in that series too. So if they, I know they've already got a collection out, then I've played most of the first one through again. But I would love to play Infinite again, maybe with some sort of remastered version. I'd play that one again.
Did you play the DLC for Infinite?
I didn't. I need to, but I never did.
See, what I would suggest is play Infinite again on that collection, and then go right into the DLC, because the DLC, first of all, Infinite already has an amazing ending. It's a story that's completely complete when you watch it.
It's like a Christopher Nolan movie almost, the way they wrap it up. It's really
you don't feel like, oh, they left it out for the DLC, but then they create this DLC that actually ends it again, and it like wraps everything together and blows your mind again. I'm like, holy crap, Ken Levine, you are the greatest of all time.
You got me. I want to play that now. Okay. All right. I loved Infinite.
Favorite.
I thought it was a really, really fun game. All right. So we're going to talk about Monster Hunter World, one of the biggest releases, really, in my opinion, the biggest release of January 2018.
For me,
and it has been, I've played it for a few days now. It's been out since Friday. And now, I guess 2 days in, I am loving this game. I'm feeling the full-on addiction hooks of the Monster Hunter series. And just for the record, I've tried 2 other Monster games previously. I can't remember which ones. I think one of them was Monster Hunter Tri, maybe on the Wii, something like that. I tried a few other Monster Hunter games, and they never did it for me. And it's not that I ever thought they were bad. I just remember thinking, this isn't that fun to play. It's kind of, it's not very intuitive, and I'm not getting a lot of motivation to care about what's happening here. I created a character, and I jumped in and started playing. Is there someone dancing back there?
No, Ian's casting a spell.
Oh, fair enough. So anyway,
Probably
but now
to turn me into a frog right now.
Monster Hunter World is a very different experience from at least what I've played in previous Monster Hunter games. And I'll start our conversation off with this game just by saying I really, really like this game a lot. Like it's way better than I thought it was going to be from my perspective. So that's my first question is kind of, so how is it for those of you listening? And I'm just curious what we think about it overall. I really like it a lot, and I'm kind of feeling the hooks of it right now. What about you?
I'm kind of, you and I, it sounds like we're in the same boat, and that is, I've played previous Monster Hunter games. I didn't dive too deep into any of them because they're not easy games to jump into. And even on the Wii U, when I played, and this wasn't my first one, this was like the second or third Monster Hunter game I bought. I think it's Monster Hunter Ultimate 3. I started it, and I just didn't like it. I didn't like how small everything was. I didn't like the combat. It doesn't explain things very well, and I was just like, I don't get the hook. I mean, I would love to get the hook, but I will say this. One of the things that I wanted with those games was I wanted the co-op, and I know the games have co-op, but I never got to experience it. So Monster Hunter World, I would say going into it, it was my most hyped game for January, but I wasn't that hyped. I'm just being honest. As somebody who gets real excited about games like Far Cry, can't wait to play Far Cry. I wasn't that way with Monster Hunter. In fact, I was even thinking before it released, I'm like, I don't know if I should have bought this. Well, Tim wanted it too, so at least, he'll buy other games kind of. I'll just look at it as I paid $30 for it. But going into it, I had kind of low expectations. But when I actually sat down and started playing it, first of all, it's a beautiful game. It's really good looking. I can only imagine how it's going to look on PC at native 4K. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous. But it's a beautiful game. And then it plays really well. And it's already quickly, while it still has a lot of things going on, there is a ton of stuff I still don't understand how it works or what I'm doing. I just kind of go through the motions. it is a little bit easier to understand what I'm doing in this one, and it's definitely got my hooks on. Like I'm playing it like a melee Destiny, and that is, I don't care if I do a mission 10 times because it's a different experience every time because the boss fight, while it's kind of pre-programmed the same way, it still doesn't play out the same way. And also, they give you an incentive to do that, and that's
right.
Every time you kill a boss, you get to loot that boss, and that gives you the ability to get that armor for that boss. And so it takes you beating it probably anywhere from 3 to 10 times to be able to complete the armor set. So that's another reason why I like it. It really makes me feel like I'm playing Destiny. It's just a pick up and play. It's not about just getting through a story and beating it and moving on. It's about, this is a game that's going to be alive for a while for me.
And for anyone who's like us and never got into the other Monster Hunter games, fear not, you don't need to play any other Monster Hunters to play this thing. It starts out right away where you're in a big ship, and there's some NPCs that are talking to you. You're kind of in a first-person mode before you create your character. And they're talking about how they're traveling to this place called the New World, hence the name Monster Hunter World. The idea is that you're going to explore this completely wild, uninhabited area, but you're like the 5th wave. That's why they keep calling your group the Fivers. You're the 5th wave of hunters that are arriving to this new world. They do that for a good reason, and that is they want to establish some characters, some fortresses, some stuff there that's been there for a little while before you arrive. So that's how the game starts, and of course things go poorly. A big thing happens, and next thing you know, you're kind of washed ashore with your what's called handler, and this is the person who helps to curate missions and quests and investigations for you, and they can make meals for you at your campsites, and they're just there to generally be your tutorial and ongoing guide throughout the game. And so you and the handler make your way through a small part of the world to your first major city, and then at that point they establish, here's what's happening, here's what we need you to do. There is a major thing you're there to investigate and essentially hunt, but they very quickly say, all right, why don't you go into your room and look into your treasure chest, and you've got a wide variety of weapons to choose from. Why don't you pick out a weapon, go into the training area, try it out. If you don't like that one, try a different weapon. So I spent some time doing that, learning some of the ins and outs of the game. And what I liked about it a lot was they, in my opinion, they really leave it wide open to you right out of the gate. So I did feel a little bit like, a Destiny style thing where it's just pick what you want and go for it. The difference is every weapon that I've tried plays very differently. I tried a sword and shield combo. I tried a giant katana. I tried this big thing, the sword axe thing, where you essentially build up energy using sword mode, where it's a little more defensive, and then you unleash a bunch of attacks with axe mode, which is pretty cool. There's a gun blade, and I ended up using the hammer for quite a while, which is very slow but incredibly powerful, and it can stun enemies, which is great. And I just recently switched over to dual blades. So now I've got 2 loadouts with 2 different sets of armor and 2 different weapons. So if I want to go really slow with a really strong armor set, I go with the hammer. And if I want to go really fast with this kind of insect armor set I just build, then I go with dual blades. And it really feels cool. It feels like an MMO type of loadout that you get to build. And this is all, by the way, in my opinion, very intuitive. I didn't have to know anything about the Monster Hunter game. I just kind of had to go in with pretty general video game knowledge of how these kind of things work. And I feel like I was able to intuitively figure out what kind of weapon I wanted to use, level that up, and then try out the different armor sets. You can preview them to see what they look like. You can run what's called investigations, which are either, so far, hunt or capture quests for monsters. Completing those gives you these little armor items. I forget what they're called, armor spheres or something like that. And you use those to then upgrade your gear. You can upgrade any piece of armor. You got 5 different armor pieces you can wear. And then, of course, you can go into your weapon area as well. And as you encounter monsters and defeat them and loot them, the investigation crew is able to unlock, and your blacksmith is able to unlock more upgrades for you. So really, it's up to you to go out and explore, encounter new monsters, defeat them, loot them, gather information about them, right? You can, investigate their footprints or the scrapes they left on the side of a rock. And as you investigate this stuff, you start to unlock ways to create new weapons and new armor. So I already sense this really fun loop to this game that I feel like I'm in the full swing of right now. And I didn't have to play any previous Monster Hunter. And I think of myself as a pretty average video game player. And I feel like I'm having a lot of success in this game. And I highly recommend it. If you like action RPGs, give this one a try. It's really fun. So that answers that question. Do I need to play Monster Hunter games before this? So Derek, let me ask you, how would you describe the learning curve? Because these games are notoriously difficult. People always talk about how they're tough and it takes a while to get used to it. How would you describe, for someone who hasn't played it, the learning curve for the combat specifically?
I mean, I would agree with you. I don't think I don't think the learning curve's as bad as maybe previous ones. I wouldn't say it's the easiest game. I think you have to do a little bit of research for yourself, either in the game or you can YouTube or search articles. There is a little bit of a learning curve is what I would say. I kind of did the same thing as you. I went through now I played the beta, so I had already messed with some of the weapons, and I actually went with the insect glaive to start the game. And I probably played I've played 12 hours. I would say probably the first 8 or 9 hours leveling that weapon up. I really liked it. Here's why. You basically use it as a spring. Like you stab the insect glaive into the ground, and then you lunge forward. You leap forward off of it. And so you fly in the air, and part of the combo is you hit X, and he flies again, and you hit circle. This is PlayStation, of course. And he'll, like, if you're locked onto the enemy, he'll fly towards the enemy and start hitting him. Well, if you hit the enemy, you then boost back up in the air, and you can end up doing this like 4 or 5 times. And you're getting these good strikes, and you're continuing the combo while using that weapon. So I actually really like that weapon. It did get a little frustrating on some fights because it is a little hard to handle, like on the melee side of this, like on the ground combat. They'll go a little like crazy, like, why are you swinging over there? The guy's over there, or the beast is over there. So I decided to give the dual blades a shot, and I've actually upgraded my dual blades to I think they're bone blades, and they do about 190 damage. So I'm not real. I don't have them like real leveled up, but they're like on the 3rd level basically.
Which, by the way, that's kind of the attack rating. I discovered very quickly that the actual HP you're taking off the enemy is super low.
You can do like 1 point per hit. Like you're not.
So I upgraded my hammer 4 times. It was up to the point where it said the attack power was 692 or something crazy, but it still was doing in the 20s and 30s with each hit. But again, with the hammer, I discovered a lot of it has to do with charge attacks. So you get a running start and you do a big swing because it's such a heavy weapon, and then you start just trying to pound away at them. But if they dodge out of the way, you have to kind of reset yourself and do another charge attack. It's very charge centric. That's how you kick off a lot of your combos. With the dual blades that you're using as well, it's all about saving up your stamina and then going into this demon blade mode where you can attack real fast and you can do this blade dance attack and all this stuff, and you can take off small chunks of damage and at incredible speeds. I actually am a lot more effective at taking down monsters with dual blades, I've discovered, than I was with the hammer. But at the same time, it doesn't really have the straight up just knock them down and stun them that the hammer did. So now I'm finding myself dodging a lot more. So in my opinion, each weapon set is almost like its own class. So you decide what class you want to play based on what weapon you want to try. And I think it's been really fun to do it that way. And of course, a couple of things that I'm still not sure about. One of them is the ranged part of the game, because you can pick up lots of different I think they're called pods, right? Yeah, the ammo that you can pick up. You can just shoot regular stones, which do essentially no damage. It just gets their attention. And then there's all these sorts of pods. There's torch pods and sleep pods and poison pods, all these things that you can collect from plants to then shoot with your bowgun. But I feel like I've got in my item list, and maybe you can help me with this, I've got a ton of sets of ammo that have big red X's on them that I can't use.
I actually was going through the same thing. Like, I was able to use ammo whenever I was using the insect glaive. Also, I would shoot my insect. But now that I've switched to dual blades, anytime I hold down L2 and then try to hit R2 to shoot something, it doesn't do anything. So I don't know. I don't fully understand that. That's one of the things that I'm confused on. I'm like, is it because I'm doing dual blades? But that doesn't really make sense because the insect glaive was a two-handed weapon as well. Right. Unless the insect glaive has some way of shooting out of it, and maybe that's what their logic is the dual blades don't have anything to shoot.
Well, see, I had the same experience with the hammer, though. But I've got all this ammo. I've got piercing ammo and slicing
Yeah,
ammo
I've
and all this
upgraded
ammo.
a ton of ammo, and I
Yeah,
don't use
so
it.
I need to figure that out. The ranged part of the game, I'm still figuring out. I did do some basic ranged stuff when you go and fight. There's an investigation you can do to kill 20 of these big wasp things, and so that gave me some practice with the ranged. And I've also used it because they're in the second main area. There was a big dragon that attacked us that I'm not ready to fight, and the idea was we need to sneak past it. So I kept shooting rocks past the dragon to make it look away from it. So I always snuck past it. Things like that. And so it's been useful for those purposes, but I'd like to figure out, especially as I do, you can do what's called capture investigations. And the idea there is you weaken the monster to the point where then you set a trap for it, specifically like a pitfall, and then you hit it with a bunch of tranquilizer darts or bombs or both. And eventually you capture this thing, and then you can beat that investigation. I haven't tried that yet. But I'm starting to collect the items I need, the trap tool and the barrels that you need to set, bombs and things like that. So I'm getting closer to that, but I need to figure out the range part of this game, I think, before I can accomplish it. Just because I feel like the melee makes sense. It's very intuitive. The ranged part is not very intuitive. So that's coming. Speaking of non-intuitive parts of this game, the biggest weakness was one of its biggest selling points, and that is the co-op experience so far. Mm-hmm. You and I tried to team up the other night to play. Now, were we eventually successful for one mission? Yeah. And that was good. And part of this could be because I was still in the opening missions, right? Now that I'm past that, maybe we'll have an easier time. But in my experience so far, and correct me if I'm wrong, this has a very convoluted co-op setup so far.
It reminds me of like Bloodborne, where like there's 2 steps that I was reading that you have to do. First, you and I have to join the same server. So we got to make sure we're on the same server. Then we're not going to see each other on the server because nobody on the server sees each other unless you go to like the highest level in the hub area, and then that's an area where everybody can see each other. Then you have to get in the same match or whatever they call it, the same one. And that one takes, I don't remember what you have to do, but you have to like put a code in or something. I don't remember. But it was just like, why? Why can't I just click to invite this player and then him join my game? Like, why make this so difficult? And that's why, like I said, it kind of reminds me of Bloodborne. Plus, I think, and I could be wrong on this, of course, but that's because you and I haven't touched it a lot. In fact, people are like, oh, why aren't you playing with me? You said you were going to play. I'm like, you know what? I don't even care about playing with friends now. I'd rather just play with randoms because it's so much easier. I can just go in, pick a list, see that I can get a reward playing with this guy. Okay, I'm joining his match.
And that is a problem.
That's all I'm doing.
That's a problem when it's much easier and smoother to just team up with random people than it is to simply send an invite to a friend, because it should have been straightforward, right? You invited me to your game. I joined it. We went back and forth for a while, even Googled some stuff on our phone trying to figure out how do we start a quest together. And so that's a problem. I think that is one of the biggest weak spots of a game that touts multiplayer, is that its multiplayer is not easy to set up and get going. Hey, Thad, my son's back there trying to get your attention. So to me, that's the biggest weak spot of the game. But that hasn't taken away from my experience overall. And I'll be honest with you, I'm really enjoying the single player experience so far as well. Yeah. So,
and that's part of it, is the single player and the co-op kind of go hand in hand. So there's a story. Well, that story is kind of like blocking the co-op. And what I mean by that is one of the rules they put in place is, if I have seen the cutscene, but you haven't seen the cutscene, I can't join your game until you've gone through the cutscene, and so on. So, like, for right now, I'm imagining I'm ahead of you now because I've taken down some big beasts. And like I said, I'm 12 hours in, and I've replayed a lot of stuff. So if I'm ahead of you, you can't join my game because you're not at my level. I can join yours, but I have to wait before you have to go through story cutscenes before I can join your match.
You heard it here, folks. I'm not on Derek's level.
Yeah, you're not on my level. So it just becomes like confusing to where, like I said, I don't really even, like, I was like, I'm going to play with Tim and Manuel. Now I'm like, I don't even care. Like, if I play with them, cool, but I'm just going to keep going to random people's games or inviting people in. They have it where you can, even your first time playing a boss, like, for instance, I was fighting the T-Rex looking thing. That thing is a terrible, terrible thing. Like, I hate that thing. It's a very, very difficult boss. And this is another thing I want to talk about in this game that's super freaking cool. Again, it's probably scripted because it's happened a couple times, but it's still really cool when it happens, especially the first time you experience it. And that is, while you're fighting a boss or another monster, the monster that you're tracking, any other monster in that area can just join in. And they can start beating the crap out of the monster you're fighting. They can start
attack you.
Yeah, or attack you. And it becomes very hectic. In fact, some of the screenshots I took, there's one screenshot of me, like, it's funny because I didn't do this on purpose, but my character looks like it's like hiding in a corner, like scared, like, oh, like this. And then in the background, you see the T-Rex looking thing like on the ground. And then above it is the dragon with its wings spread out and like roaring at the T-Rex. It's just an awesome screenshot. Yeah. I was like, I love this. And that's what's happened multiple times where just you don't see it coming and you're just, it's sometimes it works to your advantage because they beat up on the boss or the beast that you're trying to kill. But other times it's like one time I was yelling, I was like, I need you to go away. Like, you're making this more difficult. I can't get to what I need to get to because you're destroying everything. But
I mean, it really feels like you're in a Jurassic Park type of an environment because things will attack each other out of the blue. Also, when you get them weak enough where they're limping around, if you follow them, they'll go back to their nest and try to hide. Or like there was the big one with kind of like he's a battering ram kind of a dinosaur. And he went and hid under the mud, and I had to keep hitting him to keep him from gaining all his health back. And I ended up fighting him throughout his big swampy nest area. And those kind of moments, you feel like you're actually hunting a real monster that's trying to kill you. And you've got it backed against the wall, and it's desperate to survive. You know, there's another one that, I caught him eating the eggs of some other monster. He's sitting there just chowing down. So I snuck up on him and attacked him and ended up killing him that way. There's another one of the early monsters that you hunt, and you can actually do a lot of repeat hunts of this thing, which I recommend. And that's the great Jagras, or however you say it. But that thing, it will swallow other creatures as it's battling you or whatever, and its stomach becomes engorged and huge, and its entire attack pattern changes, and then he attacks you in totally different ways. So again, you feel like you're part of this big living, breathing, real world, and you are this small but strong little warrior who happens to have weapons that can hurt these things. And it's all about dodging around, timing it correctly, using the environment to your advantage. And as they get injured and run to escape, then you resharpen your weapon, you take that potion, you eat that piece of meat, whatever it is you need to kind of regenerate, and then you track it back down again. It feels really cool. For those of you who are Monster Hunter veterans, you're saying, yes, this is what the game has always been. Yeah. Okay, maybe so, but it hasn't been this fun or this intuitive before. So,
and well, to be fair, it hasn't had the control scheme and setup that it has now. I mean, trying to play this type of game on a 3DS, 2DS, or whatever is stupid. Exactly. This is where Monster Hunter games should have always been. I'm not saying they don't have a place on handheld. Sure, make it. Put it on the Switch. But this game plays really good on a home console. Yep. One thing I wanted to bring up was, while the co-op experience overall right now is a bit of a drag, but again, Tim and I are a little uneducated on it. The overall
we should try again tonight, by the way. Let's see if we can figure that out, because I do want to figure out how to team up.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep playing it. I'll probably play after we get off this. Might say hi to my wife. I haven't decided, but this game just has everything that I wanted that I didn't know I was gonna want. Like, it's just the entire experience has been fantabulous. I mean, it's just been absolutely amazing. And I think a lot of it has to do with having low expectations. I had lower expectations. I think if I would have been overhyped, I think it would have just met. But I think right now it's just one of those games where I'm like, holy crap, I'm so glad I bought this game.
I'm with you. I honestly expected to say, hey, sorry you bought this, man. I'm just not really into it. Like, I totally expected to say, this doesn't play very well, but I have the opposite experience. It's one of my surprise games already of what is shaping up to be another strong year. We'll have to wait and see how it all comes together. By the way, last week we talked about kind of our preview of the year. And since that conversation, they have announced the official release date of God of War comes out on April 20th, which is going to be a very interesting day, because you have Nintendo Labo that day. You've got a couple of weird movies like Super Troopers 2. And anyway, it's just gonna be a very interesting day. And of course, God of War comes out that day as well. That is the next time I expect to be taking down gigantic monsters. That's why I thought of it. I feel like this is going to be the main monster experience between now and then, other than in a couple weeks we'll get to replay Shadow of the Colossus. So the first half of this year is a whole bunch of experiences where you are this little hero taking down these giant monsters. And this first one has kicked it off really well. And my last question for you is, do you think this is the type of game that for you personally has the legs to last a long time? Can you see yourself really putting a lot of time into this? Or do you feel like it's just a flash in the pan, it's really cool, and then you'll move on?
Well, of course I'll move on, like I moved on from Destiny 2. In fact, I have trouble even booting up Destiny 2. I played it like maybe 3 weeks ago and played it for like an hour, and I was like, I think I'm done, which is weird because I kept playing Destiny over and over. I do think eventually I'll get sick of it, of course, and move on, but I think it's one of those games, the way it's designed, while it has a story, I'm not playing it for the story. I'm playing it for the actual gameplay and the experience, which I do want to end and make sure I say this. First of all, the gameplay is it's not like a pick up and play. You're going to have to take some time to learn, like you were saying, how the weapons work and then make a decision off the weapons. They do have some weapons. I think the dual blade, if I had to say a novice weapon set, would probably be the dual blade. But
and it does give you a 3-star rating, right? On basically ease of use for beginners.
Yeah.
So,
and I would still
if
say
3-star, they're telling you this is one you could probably use right out of the gate. And so like the sword and shield, the dual blades, I think those are pretty usable for newbies.
Yeah. So it would be like your novice, but even that, when you're playing the game, like for instance, I'll hit a button and I'm locked on the beast or the whatever I'm trying to kill at the time, and it will start the swinging, but then the beast moves. Well, the game doesn't do what other games do and go, well, I'm just going to follow it. That swing counts, and you're going to hit the beast because you aimed at it. It goes, no, it moved. You're now going to swing at this wall where the beast was. So it still takes some time to get it adjusted, get used to the fact you're going to miss a lot. But one thing that I wanted to say that I absolutely love about this game, and it kind of takes me into that Dark Souls Bloodborne type gameplay, and that is these animals that you're hunting, these beasts that you're trying to bring down and kill, these monsters, they have little, and as they get more and more difficult, it gets little, I would say smaller. They have tails before they do something, little tails that your first few creatures you fight, you're like, oh, you're gonna roll here.
They have very obvious attack.
Yeah, you're going to yell and shock me, or what you're gonna do this and that. As I fought more difficult monsters, I'm starting to know that starting to see that their tails are a little more subtle, and you have to like really pay attention to them.
Yep.
Because,
absolutely.
For instance, the T-Rex looking one can one-shot you. If you mess up one time, it will one-shot you. And so that's why I said it's very frustrating, because the rules of the game is basically, for most missions, is especially if you're in a party of 4, you have 3 lives for that entire 4 people that are playing. So if player 1 dies twice and player 3 dies the first time for him, that's 3 total, game over. You lost. And so I've tried to refight this T-Rex like 5 times. I think I've fought him 6 times with a group of randoms. I've beat him once. The other 5 times we failed, and it's always because people faint too many times. But as you keep playing this game, it gets more and more difficult. It gets harder and harder to read these animals, and their attacks are much heavier. But I'm really loving the experience. To answer your question, do I think it has long legs? Yeah, I think it's going to be something I play for a while, because I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I might try that Shadow of Colossus a little bit. I don't think that's going to hook me. I actually think that game will bore the hell out of me.
Compared to this one, it's going to feel a little bit lackluster now. Now that I'm playing this, I'm like, it's going to feel empty and slow comparatively.
Yeah, so I doubt I'll play that more than an hour. And then there might be another game or 2 I'm not thinking about. But really, I think this has a shot of being my main February game. So I could be playing this for a long time.
Yeah. And by the way, if you are playing this game and you're at that point where some of the monsters are getting too tough, just go back and run some investigations, run some hunts, re-hunt some creatures that you've already killed several times. Every time you do one of those, also every time you do one of the bounties, we didn't mention this, bounties are little mini objectives you can set up for yourself. Everything from collect from 12 different bone piles, or collect 4 different types of plants or mushrooms. Those things give you what's called research points, which you can use to upgrade stuff. And they also give you these little armor items that you can then use to upgrade your armor. So as you find difficult monsters that keep killing you, just start doing those investigations, upgrade all your armor, and next thing you know, you'll be able to take more hits than you used to be able to. I had one of my most entertaining battles yesterday. I'll just close with this thought, was with that barrel creature that I was talking about. In the desert, he kind of rams everything. He's got a big castle-looking head. And he kind of looks like a T-Rex, but his head looks like a wall, basically. And so anyway, so I'm fighting him. I finally get him to the point where he's limping, and he's on the run. He's trying to get back to his nest, which he eventually did. But as I'm chasing him, I accidentally discovered some things I could do with the hammer I didn't know. So as you're running, if you get to a steep enough decline, right, as you're going downhill, you'll start to slide. Your guy will go into this slide maneuver. And since I'd already built up my charge attack, I hit attack, and my guy ended up doing this kind of somersault hammer attack that I didn't know he could do, because he was sliding a certain way. And he does a spin move where the hammer just hits the thing like 20 times if you can connect every time. And he does one big final slam with the hammer. And I was like, how did I just do that? So that was an awesome discovery. And then on an ensuing hill, I jumped again, and this time I landed on the creature's back. And it actually gave me button prompts to attack, and then to hold on while he tried to shake me off, and then keep attacking, and then hold on while he tried to shake me off. And I took down a ton of his health that way. And I had no idea I could do that. That's the first time I've seen it. It didn't explain that. It wasn't in the tutorial. It's one of those things that kind of happened by accident. And it made me start to wonder, okay, are there certain monsters is there ways that I can get up on a cliff or in a tree and jump down from above? And now I'm starting to wonder what other tactics I can use in this game. So anyway, all that to say, I've had some happy discoveries like that tell me this is a game that people at Capcom put their heart and soul into, and I'm having a blast with it. So I love it.
Yeah, it's a great game. I wouldn't be surprised if it stays in my top 10. It's obviously number 1 right now, but I would say it has a shot if it can stay relevant for a month or so, where I'll have fond memories and be like, kind of like Resident Evil 7. That game came out, I beat it twice in the first month, the first month that I owned it, and it stayed in my top 5 because I had so many great memories with it. Monster Hunter World is that type of game for me so far. Already 12 hours in, I've only owned the game for 2 days. That's pretty awesome.
Really good. I highly recommend it. And if those of you who are listening are playing and you want to take a shot at multiplayer with us, let us know. We'll see if we can figure something out. But in any case,
I only play with Japanese players. They're actually good. American ones suck. They're a bunch of noobs. But when I get in there with those weird like Japanese symbols, I'm like, heck yeah, we're gonna dominate this junk. Those guys, seriously, they're dropping traps. They're electrocuting. I'm like, I love these guys. They're freaking amazing.
Fair enough. You stick with what you love.
Get the Americans out of here.
All right, that does it for episode 111. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you.
Who is your daddy? I am the father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?